It's started, good to go.
Lucas was going to tell us about some new stuff he's done with Galadriel, and I'm excited to see it.
I've made some changes. I would show, but I've realized that there's nothing essentially visually different that I've done. I've made it work with 2005, which is news for everybody who's using it, Bywater partners. So 2005, it's still gonna work, yeah. But as for visuals to show off, there's not much there. Somebody must have something else fun that we could talk about, right?
Well, since this does get published to the web and we were chatting a little bit before the recording started, Owen, do you want to just give your pitch on the chance that some people watch this video out on the World Wide Web, and we're looking for?
Sure. To repeat what I said before, I have been testing some accessibility bugs, some patches for accessibility issues in the OPAC, and a lot of them are related to users of screen readers, trying to improve the OPAC experience for people who are using screen readers. And while I can test them to a certain extent, I'm not a blind user. I'm not sight impaired. I can do my best, but I don't think it's the same as, you know, an actual screen reader user testing them. And so it would be great if we had some people who we could pass these bugs on to for testing, and you know, we could set up a sandbox and apply the patch and share the link and a test plan and get their help. That would be very cool. It would make me much more confident in the solutions that we were proposing for things that we don't really understand. And it was suggested that we post this question on the Koha mailing list, so I will try to remember to do that.
I'm curious of everyone here. I think we at Bywater took care of instances where a red bar was appearing on the OPAC with the latest point update and Galadriel. And Lucas can talk a little bit more about that one. Does anyone still have that showing up that might need a quick fix?
To be clear, Margaret, that was a Galadriel problem,
yeah,
and not a Koha problem.
Mm-hmm.
I had thought that it was a problem with a newsfeed item that I'd put in that had a red bar because it showed up the same day I did that. So I hadn't told anyone at Bywater yet because I hadn't got around to it. And now it's gone. So it must have been that. Yay.
That was a accessibility patch that I think Owen wrote, that allows you to press tab on the OPAC and skip to main content, which is cool.
That is cool.
I helped with it. It wasn't originally mine, but I tweaked it because I'm a busybody and I want to just get my hands into everything that everyone else does.
Sure.
I have a question on the logs, and like sometimes we'll make a change in our CSS or our jQuery, and we think it's working, and then staff comes along, a couple days later, and it's like such and such has disappeared or it's corrupted or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, that was me. I made some change, and now I have to go back and figure out what that change was. And so I look at the logs, but we've got so much jQuery and so much CSS that when I, look at it, I get everything that's in that section. Is there any way to have the log just report the changes that were made so that you could pinpoint what you could see, well, on Tuesday, here's this small section, so it must be that thing that I did that's now causing the problem.
Not off the top of my head, but that would be a slick enhancement.
Yeah, with those, it would be kind of nice if you could almost do it like a diff view, like you can with patches on the Bugzilla, where it would just show you these lines are what was added or removed, and that was it.
That
And you
would be
could see
great.
what had been removed. I mean, I know that's probably a lot more stuff going on, but especially when we have people go in to edit the jQuery for like the first time or who don't do it very often, I always tell them save a copy in a text file before you make changes just in case something breaks. And I mean, I do enough tweaking in the jQuery that I probably have a fairly updated version. Probably once a week I end up having to save whatever's in there to do some testing. And so we can usually fix it pretty easily, but that kind of thing would be really helpful, especially with people who aren't in there all the time.
Well, I can file a bug or look and see if there's anything out there. And then I guess a follow-up question to that would be, if these preferences are going to end up moving to the news sections, how do the logs work with that area? Do they work the same way? I've never looked to see. We don't use news all that much, so I'm not sure how that would work.
At first glance, it doesn't look like those changes are logged, but I'm not positive. I could certainly see the log view interface being changed so that you could select two updates to compare to each other. So that would be an interesting thing to do, but you're right, if it's not in the preferences anymore, then it won't get picked up by the logs. There might be a bug already for that, but if not, we should put that in.
So I'm a little worried about stuff going to the news section. So here's just an off the top of my head thought. So if we're moving things to the news section, because that makes it sort of easier for non-experienced CSS jQuery people, is there any way that there could be like a system preference that says, pull your stuff from either news or what we have now, the preferences that we have now, and then people who are comfortable with the news and only want that, they edit it there, and people who are comfortable with the way it is now, that the system preference says we'll use it from there.
I think what you're asking about is something that Lucas has worked on, which is an option to be able to switch between the coding editor and the visual editor in the news interface. Okay. So I think that's what you're referring to, and that is in the most recent version. That's in master right now, so that's coming up.
Okay.
say to clarify, to the best of my understanding, Owen, the HTML system preferences are on the roadmap to get moved into news. Were OPAC user JS and OPAC user CSS also going to get moved to news? Because I didn't think so.
Oh, okay.
No, it's entirely connected to creating the ability to have multiple language versions of the HTML preferences. If you had a single system preference with OPAC main user block, it had to be in that language. And then you would have to jump through a bunch of hoops to try and make it available to other languages. So putting it in the new system allows you to create multiple versions of it based on the current language. And that's the reason for the switch. OPAC user JS and OPAC CSS are not going to be included in that.
Okay,
But,
thank you for clarifying
but
that.
the issues with using the visual editor are the same for, just plain HTML, and that's why the ability to switch between CodeMirror and the visual editor are going to be good.
Thanks.
Thank you for clarifying that, Margaret.
And I just looked at Bugzilla, and there doesn't look like there's a bug yet about adding logging for changes to the news features. And so that is something we probably want to go ahead and file.
Yeah.
Or you'd make a new news feature for that block and expire the previous one, and you've kind of got a built-in log right in news. But that's a pretty different workflow than people are used to. Really,
Eventually, we'll just
copy paste it back in, just like, nope, turn that off, turn that one back on.
eventually we'll just recreate WordPress within the new system, and it'll have a revision log and all sorts of things. So.
I still think the new system needs to come up with a new name and probably have its own area under administration, because it's now all, the visual user experience or the OPAC user experience, and not just here's the news items.
There's a bug for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and meanwhile, there's also the bug for creating whole new pages. I can't remember what that's called now. But
the koha-US CMS.
Yes, the CMS one. So that's going to be
making that
another.
a little bit more user-friendly to hop into would not be remiss.
Mm-hmm.
And for people listening at home, bug 22660 and 24387, I think are the ones we're just talking about. Lisette, is that right?
Yeah, 22660 is the one that got pushed to master that we were talking about a few minutes ago. Allow use of CodeMirror for editing HTML in the news editor. And then this 24387 is for renaming the news tool. And there's also some discussion about there about maybe having part of it be having the news things actually be under a separate tool, because some libraries have a lot of news items, and so then it's not getting like as confused. And then Owen just put 15326 add CMS feature into the chat as well.
I keep thinking that it would be fairly simple to accomplish the separation of news and non-news just by adding a flag to the interface, so that it's the same script. It's just you're passing a flag that says don't only show me news right now, or vice versa. But I don't know if that's enough. I haven't even tried it. So.
Like when you're in that window, you can click a button or two and filter news, not news, everything. I'll just kind of like with reports, how you can just start typing a keyword or number, and it's just going to be like, doo-doo. Here's the things that actually match that, and span them.
Yeah, I think that would probably work for our consortium.
Yeah, because that could be a lot of news for all the consortial members, all having their own thing.
On the OPAC, on the results list, is there a way to display only where you have the publishing place, the publisher, and the date? Is there a way to display only the publishing date?
So the, I think that this is a longstanding issue with the MARC format, which is that that's all one big string in the MARC record. MARC wasn't actually designed to be machine readable at all. Otherwise, they would have put that date in a separate field. So out of the box, I think that the process of building the MySQL tables tries to pull the publisher date, the publication date, but I'm not sure how machine readable it gets. But it's not that's not where the data is coming from for this view. It's coming right out of the MARC record. So.
Well, the date is in a separate subfield.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 264 subfield C or 260 subfield C.
So I guess you.
Have the cataloging SIG here, so like those were fighting words, Owen.
Well, I'm still saying that it's not machine readable because you've got like, oh, did they put a C in there or did they not put a C in there next to the year and that kind of thing. But so if it's okay, yeah. So if it's in a separate subfield, you could theoretically modify the XSLT to break it out or to wrap it in a class. There have been a lot of tweaks to the default XSLT for search results in order to add additional classes or IDs to things like that, as people have asked for, more avenues for customization. So that seems like a reasonable change to make.
I could see that being handy for public libraries who are whose users are typically just interested in having like the latest edition or the newest or something like that, and not necessarily interested in everything that academic or special libraries are interested in, where they'd be seeking certain publishers, or is this on a university press, something like that.
And Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong, but Galadriel does work to trim down some of the extensive knowledge that can be displayed. So you can kind of focus on making that display a little bit more succinct. I know there was a thing with whether or not it was looking at the 260 versus 264 ways back, and it's been a while since I checked on that issue.
Well, if modifications like Owen just talked about, where class names have been added in different areas, has been done, then yeah, Galadriel can do a bunch of hiding. Essentially, is all it does. It just hides different class names and bits about the mark record, and not just hiding. You can also change the text color, font size, stuff like that.
I filed a bug for the changes to news items not being logged 26205. Earlier, Lucas dropped a link in the chat, diffchecker.com, when we were talking about being able to see the difference between two text files. And especially if anyone's just listening and doesn't see chat log, I wanted to make sure that got mentioned because I think that will be a very helpful tool. You can kind of do it a little bit in some editing programs too, like Sublime Text, I think has a version, but it doesn't always work very well if like there's an extra space at the top of one of them. Sometimes it throws off the whole thing. And I haven't tested this yet, so I'm not sure if this has the same problem or if it can tell. But there are some programs where like if you're looking at the logs for what was before and what's now, there are some tools that you can paste in like the previous and the current and see the changes.
And we do have a plugin already in the staff client for doing a diff. I think it's for the cataloging merge. So it's right there. You can use it.
In theory, could that also be used on patron merge? Because right now it only shows you, when you're doing patron merge, it only shows you a few of the fields when you're deciding which one. And so we always open up like all of the details for both patrons to make sure that we're getting like the most updated information for sure. And it might be kind of nice if you could look at all of, although that also might be difficult because you might be merging 6 patrons because they made, 5 self-registered accounts because they weren't following instructions. So that might be more complicated. But I know we've been doing a lot more patron merges since we turned on the self-registration that lets them actually have a card number to use our digital resources.
Yep, same here. And I'm never sure, what, do I need to like tell them, hey, by the way, we merged your accounts because you had an extra one, like, or should I just let them figure it out? Do you have a procedure for that?
Well, usually we find it out when they come in to get their card upgraded from like the self-registered card that expires pretty fast to a card that's not going to expire. We give them a new card number anyway because we can't like print out their card number on one of our cards.
Right.
So we just tell them, this is your card number now. And sometimes if I'm doing it and I have to merge like 5 or 6 accounts, I'll just make very clear that this is how you log in. You do not need to self-register on the website to log in again. And if they have any trouble, to call us and we'll see what's going on and troubleshoot with them. So, and most of the time we just say, this is your card number, and then we don't have problems with the same people over and over again.
Doesn't that wreak havoc with their Overdrive accounts connection or Hoopla or one of the ones using their previous card number?
We just tell them if they've been using Overdrive, we ask them before we change their card number. So if they don't have anything checked out and don't have any holds, it doesn't really matter. And it hasn't seemed to be an issue. Canopy will just make you log in again. Like the first time you log in on a computer, it'll say, hey, you need to update your library card because it's saying it's not valid anymore. And then they just put in their new card number and it works. So it's really only a problem for Overdrive if they have items checked out or on hold. So we just check with them first.
That does make me wonder about the people who are able to use Overdrive very efficiently, but self-register 3 times, not logging into the OPAC.
Usually the people who self-register 3 times, not logging into the OPAC, are just trying to place holds on items and not so much using Overdrive and stuff. They just want to place holds to come pick them up. Often at our curbside service, which is extra fun because then we check them out to them before they show up. And so then we have to like merge the accounts then, but still leave them self-registered because they haven't provided any proof that they live here, and we're only checking out like a couple items to them, and it's a whole weird thing. But luckily, the circulation manager deals with all that. I'm not sure how she's been handling, if she's been leaving them a note with their accurate card number or what. She hasn't talked to me about it at all. I'll check with her today when I'm in. She's probably prepping the curbside stuff for today right now.
In the patron record, there's the section for the patron account flags, the lost card or gone, no address. Do you think anybody would find it useful to be able to add, have the ability to add more flags, like so that you could add a, get ID, block them and have it, automatically be, get their ID to update their account, as opposed to what our staff generally does is they go in and make they spend time to go in and make a note, but that, it doesn't take a lot of time, but when you do it over and over and over again, it, it takes time. So if you had the ability to, just check off, update ID or any other kind of message that you wanted to block them for, but that you didn't want to have to actually type it all out.
I feel like that's something we'd already have an authorized value for, because you can kind of do that with a bunch of other areas. Manual invoices, there's a whole section for debit and credit types now.
I
Well,
was
and
just
there's-
thinking, maybe you could, what if we added a flag to the extended patron attributes where you could define a patron attribute that said, if true, this blocks checkouts? Now that would be pretty complicated.
Well, and also right now you can only use like either a open text field or a drop down. You can't do like a checkbox where you could have it be like the checkbox flags, though there is a bug for that. And I've also seen a bug that was about like letting you set different options instead of just a string or a drop down, like dates and or you could put like a date picker if you wanted to put like a date of
Yeah.
like consent to use the like if you have them sign a form before checking out hotspots or something because they're more expensive, then you could have just like a date they signed the form on, and could run reports on that. Like if you needed to re-sign it every 2 years or something, then that could be a report you could run, where it would force a date. And then so if we've been doing a lot with patron attributes, so I've been reading a lot of the patron attribute bugs the last couple of weeks. So it's possible that if we had it set up where you could do more different kinds of things, like a checkbox, that you could say, like you were saying, Owen, if there's have a flag for that where you could say if it's true, then block them. I could see how that would be really helpful.
Yeah, our staff tends to write long messages on the accounts. And so I'm just looking for, ways to make that take less time and be easier, because when you open up the patron record, if I'm working with a patron, which I don't do as much as they do, I have this long message. I'm like, okay, I've got to digest what they're telling me about this patron, and maybe there are some easier ways to convey the information. So that's what I'd be looking for.
Barbara, do you also have those staff members who, when they see one of those messages, they just instinctually read it aloud to the patron, no matter what the contents are? Because we have that.
I hope not.
We've gotten pretty good about training our staff, so if it's something the patron can be told, it goes in the OPAC message, and if it's something they can't be told, it goes in a staff note or staff message. But we also added, I added some jQuery to be able to hide each message or note, so that if we needed to show them the screen for some reason, we could hide it and they wouldn't see it. This came up when we had a patron who had been trespassed at a different library for inappropriate behavior, moved to Moscow, and one of our staff members almost turned the screen around, and I happened to notice because I was walking by and I was like, go to this other screen instead, because it was a message. So if you went to like just the details screen, it didn't show up at that time. And or maybe we even went into like the edit screen and just did it that way. But then I was like, we need some jQuery for this.
Can you share that, Lisette?
It should be in the library.
Okay.
The jQuery library. I'll double check today. I'm not working till 10, which is why I don't have my video on, because I'm still at home in my messy, not office room. But I'll check when I get in today and make sure it's in the jQuery library, but I'm pretty sure it's there. And it's just, you have to refresh the page to make it show up again. But since usually we're only hiding it if we're like turning the screen around so the patron can see, it's not that much of an issue. So.
Now I'm just trying to picture the desks where you can just swivel that monitor so easily. My experience, those just get very cluttered. So it's like good work on circulation, keeping those desks clean. Or is it one of the nice ones where you could just flip it, rotate it, like you see at point of sale stations nowadays that use Square or whatever?
No, it's one that rotates, but it's nice because it has a large base and only part of the base rotates, so we can put like sticky notes and stuff on the base that's not the rotating part. Although right now we're not really rotating it that much because our desk is not deep enough to rotate it and not knock the plexiglass over. So we are we're figuring out some plans for that. We might put up, we have a lot of monitors that aren't getting used right now, so we might put up monitors on the other side that we can usually just have it be like extended screens and just put up like our slider from our website or something most of the time, but then we can like change it to mirroring if we need to show the patron their account information, but we haven't really got off the ground with that yet.
That sounds more practical than my idea, which was to turn your plexiglass screens into a futuristic heads-up display.
Oh, that would be so cool.
You've got it projecting down onto the plexiglass kind of from behind.
Oh, now I want to do that. But yeah, we have like 10 monitors that aren't getting used on staff and patron computers that aren't getting used, so we can do social distancing. So I was like, why not just set it up? And then it's like nice little digital screens at both the staff computers for, you know, just like our website slider, and or we can have it on the OPAC with the cover flow going, or change it up so it's not the same thing every time people come in, and have that option. But we haven't got the go-ahead to do that yet.
And I feel like your circulation manager is going to be giving you an earful about training her staff on switching between mirroring and non-mirroring mode. And
yeah,
getting
that's
the slideshow running in PowerPoint.
well, we can just put up the website and have the slideshow run automatically, at least. So there's that. But then that's like extra setup in the morning to make sure that the right screens are showing on the right place and that it's extending, not mirroring. And especially since I'm only in the building 2 days a week, like it's not like I can just, like if I was in the building every day, I'd be there by the time we opened and could just go set it up first thing every day. But I'm not in the building every day, so that's not so feasible.
I had a question on self-registration. I've seen a couple other libraries that have like an extra section that's maybe like sign up for our newsletter, or you know, they have some extra content in there. How do they do that?
Those would be extended patron attributes that can be shown on the OPAC, that display on the OPAC side. Because we played around with that some. We don't have that turned on because our newsletter one option is only for Latah County patrons, and those attributes don't have a set field. They change, their ID changes every time you refresh the page. So we can't say like make patron attribute 1 only show up if they've selected these branches in the drop down for branch codes, which is probably also a bug I should fill because I don't think there was a bug for that when I was looking at it last week. Because I unless someone knows why we did it that way, or if it just wasn't set for some reason. Because like on the staff side, you can do it. Although then if you add extra attributes, it can mess up your jQuery because sometimes it changes the order of the attributes when you do that. Yeah, you make it something that they can see, and I think there's also an option for can they edit it on the OPAC.
Okay.
That issue with the ID sounds really familiar. But I don't know if it's something that actually has gotten addressed or if it's just something that I remember.
Well, and I think I asked about it in the IRC last week when I was looking at it too, so you might have just seen me asking about it then. No, okay. I couldn't find a bug when I was looking, but maybe I'll file one today.
Seems like we're out of topics to talk about. Any other questions for the group? Well, those very non-committal shrugs probably mean that it's a wrap.
I'm going to run off and play with adding a diff to system preference log entries. So
Exciting. Gonna have to tell us about it next month at our next meeting.
okay.
Yes. Well, I just thought of something actually. Lucas, there was a bug that we tested. Barbara and I had both tested about the OPAC self-registration, and then it got failed QA last week because it's not working anymore. Where we were going to just move forward with it without one of the steps because we decided it wasn't.
Mhm.
What bug number?
Yeah, I had it open, but now I'm not. Oh yeah, okay. So 25100. The add ability to have the custom text at the top of the patron self-registration. I got that same error Barbara did when I went and
Oh, good. So it wasn't just me.
no, in fact, I went to test it and you had already made a sandbox for it. And I was like at the same time you were testing it was also when I was like, oh, I'm going to go test that again. And it was funny because it wasn't even like right after Lucas had made the comment, the most recent comment. It was like a week and a half later, we both happened to go test it at the same hour. But then I tested it again later on a different sandbox just in case it was like a fluke with the sandbox and got the same error.
Now, I think that's a problem in this bug, which I'm not quite sure how to address. So this would be sort of an HTML system preference, but instead it's in the news feature. And being applying to the self-registration and picking a branch is a bit tricky because as a unauthenticated user of the OPAC who's signing up for self-reg, you're not associated with a branch. So I don't know exactly what to do to go forward with this one. Besides maybe adding some JavaScript to the template that would disable the branch in this case.
Or you make people pick a branch and then proceed to self-register.
I'll have to go back and look at this. I haven't looked at it since I saw you guys' comments, but I haven't revisited the bug.
So is it specifically a goal to have it customizable per library?
It was part of the test plan. I mean, I think even for our consortium, we have it added with jQuery right now, some text at the top of the self-registration screen with some instructions like, if you already have a card, please don't self-register. But just being able to do it without jQuery, both so we can reduce the amount of jQuery we have and also to make it more accessible for people who aren't me at our consortium to edit it. Because Bonnie's we have like one other person who will go into the jQuery if she needs to, but is not like confident at going in and editing the jQuery. So like for us, being able to move it out and have it be not linked into the jQuery would be helpful. And especially for like other libraries that don't have someone that is proficient at jQuery.
And then like for us, we're a single site. So we actually have the branch selection hidden, I guess, because they don't really need to select it.
I'm going to mark this in my notes as a bug to make sure and revisit. I will do that.
Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks.
And then is that a wrap?
I also just submitted a bug for the extended patron attributes, 26206, that they don't have a stable ID when on the OPAC side.
I think we can stop the recording. That's all the interesting stuff we're going to wring out from this meeting this week.